Have you ever played the Legend of Zelda series? If not, then what possible reason could you have for wasting your time listening to me talk when you could be playing that? Really, go. Get out of here. Anyway, I'm here today to discuss the beginning of one of my favorite franchises in gaming history, and this is all about the creation of the Legend of Zelda. So remember last episode I discussed the beginnings of Miyamoto and Mario? Well, I dropped a hint that seemed to stoop a lot of you. Oh, I know, it was sneaky. Did anyone guess that this was Link? Ha! That's what I thought. Anyway, I discussed how Miyamoto's life experiences really translated into his game design, and you can see this with many of his franchises, and he tends to really draw inspiration from what's human and what we will connect with emotionally, and he puts that into his video games, and that's something that I have a lot of respect for. I mean, a lot. Now, one of his biggest franchises, The Legend of Zelda, got its start as an adventure game from Miyamoto's childhood. During this time period in Shinobi, Miyamoto was an adventurous one. He would constantly be exploring the surrounding areas of his home, which included places like secluded lakes, caves, and even smaller villages. Starting to feel the inevitable inspiration yet? Now, one of the major experiences Miyamoto had was the discovery of a cave out in the middle of a wooded area. He cautiously entered the cave and he explored even more. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is he would carry a lantern during these experiences. Does that sound familiar? Things like cave exploration and more prominently the symbol of the lantern are two huge components in the Zelda franchise. I gotta say, this kid's brave. I don't know if I would have explored an unknown cave with just something like a lantern. Other than that main involvement with the cave, the Zelda series is also taking cues from things like Norse and Japanese mythologies. Now that's something that's very noticeable in titles such as The Wind Waker. One specific description of the creation of this series is brought on by none other than Miyamoto himself, who describes the franchise as an attempt to bring life to a miniature garden for players to play in. He also had a rough time coming up with a final name for the franchise. He knew he wanted it to be The Legend of something, but just didn't know what to finish it off with. Now, he didn't want to name it after the protagonist. It wasn't really until he heard of a famous author by the name of F. Scott Fitzgerald. You know, that guy who wrote about some Great Gatsbys and some other stuffs? Yeah, his wife's name was Zelda. And Miyamoto finally decided the name of his new franchise. Now, Miyamoto and his team worked around the same time frame as the development time of Super Mario Bros., and the team really had to separate the ideals and the way both games were set up. Now, Miyamoto also stressed how he wanted Super Mario Bros. To be linear and The Legend of Zelda to be the exact opposite. He wanted players to get together and discuss where they needed to go next. He was really excited about that possible communication line between everyone. And Hyrule just became his vision for how a living, breathing world should be inside of a video game. He wanted to fill it with various secrets and various creatures. He didn't want to give the players a map for the world because he wanted it to resemble his adventures as a boy. He also cites one other incident when he was hiking and he found a lake to explore, and he wanted the players to feel that sense of wonder and be surprised just like he was when he found new landmarks. Now, another vision that helped him with the game design, and something I found to be really interesting, and I figured I'd go ahead and put it in the video while I'm talking about this, he remembered how he had trouble traversing through his home as a child since they had a lot of traditional sliding doors that resembled a maze-like structure in his home. And you may have guessed it, that was his inspiration for the dungeons. So in conclusion, The Legend of Zelda went on to become a huge success all around the world. It's noted as being a staple franchise of video game history, and it set the standards for how adventure games should be made from here on out. It wasn't just another game that was linear in structure and made you strive to get a high score. It was a true adventure. It was something that was filled with wonder and mystery and had you go out and explore anything and everything in sight. It was also unique in that sense because it was the first game to implement a save feature, which was a lot less cumbersome for players instead of those codes. I hated those things! So, thank you, Shigeru Miyamoto. Thank you, The Legend of Zelda, for creating something that really pushed and moved the game industry along and went to become one of the most well-known and the most respected franchises of all time. The Legend of Zelda has gone on to sell hordes and hordes of copies worldwide, and it's an amazing franchise, and I urge all of you guys, if you haven't played a game in that series yet, please pick up one for one of your respective systems out there. There's so many to choose from. I think there's like 16 or 17 out there now. Please pick up one, play it, give it a shot. It's an amazing franchise. Buy Majora's Mask 3D when it comes out.